Welcome to the Big Me Kickoff. I am your host, Kevin Noon. It is Thursday, Tuesday, Tuesday, May 28th. It's been a minute since I've done a show back at home, finally. Was on the road for Southern Swing 3+ weeks. Hope you had a chance to check all of our coverage out over at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We have a great promo going on right now. No coupon code needed. Get an annual subscription, whether or not you've been a past subscriber, you've never been a subscriber, you're a current subscriber, you can get a year of Buckeye Huddle for just $69.99. We're in the closing days of this promotion. I don't know how much longer it's going to go, so I urge you to get on board right now while you can and take advantage of our best offer ever. And honestly, I do not expect to see a yearly deal like this in the coming future. So if you've been on the fence, now's the time to get on board over at Buckeye Huddle. I also want to check out our good friends over at No Naturals. And I don't have the sheet on me, I don't think, because I have stuff just strewn all over. But the good news is I have the copy right here. So are you ready for an entirely different edible experience? Welcome to No Naturals, where we're shattering the stereotypes of one note, slow acting gummies. Forget waiting over an hour to feel the effects. Our gummies are like a sprinter out of the blocks, fast acting in just 15 to 30 minutes. Picture this. You're not just choosing a flavor, you're choosing your vibe with five core experiences and 6 custom combos. You're in full control. Whether it's energy and focus without the crash, a peaceful slumber that lasts all night, or a game-changing burst of bliss and euphoria, these edibles are the real deal. And the best part, you don't need a doctor's recommendation. No Natural gummies are dispensary quality and discreetly delivered right to your door. So whether you're craving a productivity boost, a good night's sleep, or some blissful euphoria, say hello to No Naturals. Try them today and use code HUDDLE10 for 10% off your order at shop.nonaturals.com. So there you go with that. Let me save that and bring that banner up. I had to have that right there. We'll get to comments here in a second. Ohio bookseller, who's been a good friend of the show. The faithful are here. I appreciate it. I miss talking to everybody. I have been gone, as you know, for almost a month. And that was a lot of traveling, a lot of car miles. We did over 6,000 miles, road miles. We've done more miles in past Southern Swings, but that involved flights. There was the year that we did the Southern Loop. We went to Texas and we went to Arizona. We did almost 6,100 miles of just road traveling, which is a record. I was talking to a friend of mine, and I'm actually messaging them right back about travel nightmares, and if you've incurred them along the way. And I say that on the backdrop of we see all of the videos on Twitter, people losing their you know what at the gate or on the plane, having to be dragged off planes and things of that nature. It really can't go more than a day or two without a high profile one being captured on a cell phone and being posted somewhere. My homework to you guys is to tell me any that you have been A, involved with, or B, have witnessed. I've been flying my entire life. I flew as a baby. I didn't actually fly the plane, but you know what I'm saying. And for a lot of years, I've continued to fly. And I think that I probably have had 4 or 5 incidents in the airplane, in the airport, airplane, whatever, of where I probably got upset. And I say that in terms of moments of where could I have handled things differently? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. What really kind of started the conversation, and I started it, was talking about a flight. Remember when Ohio State played at Washington? And really, I'm just kind of talking now until we get some more people on the show and we start getting some questions. Then I'll start answering questions. We're going to go an hour because I have a Zoom call I have to jump on right after this. So I'm kind of limited on the time. I'm trying to kind of figure out my schedule day in and day out. I have a couple of weekly calls that I have to get on, and they keep moving a little bit on me. So I don't know the sweet spot yet. But back to the travel situation. I was flying a certain airline. I'm not going to mention them. No reason to. I'm not here to denigrate an airline, a flight attendant, whatever. I mean, it just could have been a bad day for everybody. But I was flying Columbus to Milwaukee to Seattle. And we took off. Everything's fine. We take off maybe a couple minutes late. This is when Ohio State played at Washington. Brandon Sane was a rookie. He was a freshman that year. He traveled, scored a touchdown. Jim Tressel was a little embarrassed by it. Ohio State was up. Just kind of wanted to run out the clock. Washington did not tackle. Brandon Sane runs in. So we take off and are heading toward Milwaukee. And I notice the plane's turning around. I'm not the only one. We're like, what gives? What's going on? Well, apparently a hatch on the bottom of the plane was not closed. How that happens, how with all the checks and everything else and air traffic control and so on and so on. And I know they're looking at radar screens. They're not sitting there physically inspecting the plane. Not exactly sure how that happens. That's neither here nor there. That's the true villain of this story, is the person who did not do their job and secure the hatch. So Rick S., I'm not going to say yes, but I'm not going to say no. So we turn around and we're really getting a half-ass, yeah, sucks to suck. Just gonna have to figure it out. I didn't, even under the best of circumstances, I did not have the longest layover in Milwaukee. So I'm talking to fellow passengers and I'm like, this is a problem. I certainly hope they have something planned for us when we get back to Columbus because of their error. Well, the flight attendant did not take kindly to that and threatened me. And I didn't react well to that and said, "Are you sure about this? Are you sure you want to do this?" And my flight ended up being Columbus to Milwaukee to O'Hare to SeaTac. And I got into town 14 hours later than anticipated. So when people are like, have you been to Seattle? My answer is yes, for about 30 hours. I got in really late Friday, maybe even early Saturday, covered the game on Saturday, and flew out essentially on a red eye Sunday morning back to Columbus. So I want to hear your travel stories ahead of things. Now, I should have probably done a better job of promoting the show. You don't do the show for a month and people are like, well, what happened to him? Where is he? But Southern Swing is in the books, as I said, and we did 6,000 miles. We talked to players in West Virginia, North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Louisiana, and Texas. We obviously drove through Mississippi, did not talk to a player. We have talked to players in the past from Mississippi, no Mississippi players, but West Virginia was a new state for us. Louisiana, to talk to a player in Louisiana was a new state for us. And obviously Alabama was a new state for us. We talked to 3 players in Alabama. We're scheduled to talk to 4. Really bad weather in the, in the Southeast, in Midwest this year, this storm cycle. And we certainly had to do our fair share of dodging storms and had some events moved around on us. Some things we knew about, some things we didn't. And the 4th player we were supposed to talk to in Alabama, they moved their spring game up a day to avoid storms, which was the right call. We didn't hear about it. I went to their Facebook page of the school while we were sitting in the parking lot wondering, where the hell is everybody? Only to find out. Now, the reality is even if they would have told us, we wouldn't have been able to get there in time because there was another another spring game the day before when theirs was going on in another part of the state with a player that we felt Ohio State had a better shot of landing. But we didn't know it was going to be an either or at that point. We just assumed that we were just going to be able to get through and do all of that. But I've not gone through and done all of the cats bothering me. To do all the math, how many players did we talk to? I mean, we've done the mileage, we've done some of that stuff. I know the states, but we will have a by the numbers piece coming up probably by the end of the week over at buckeyehuddle.com to kind of put some things into perspective, the enormity of the trip, everything that we had gone through. I mean, it was a lot. And honestly, the lion's share of the driving, takes place on the front end and the back end. On the back end, we had to get back from Dallas, Texas to Columbus, Ohio. There's no real shortcut. There's no real way to say, well, we're going to just try and save some mileage. You go the way that you go. On the way down, we added a little bit because normally we would start the trip in North Carolina because North Carolina's turned into a major recruiting state. But with a player in West Virginia, we were able to go and talk to Deron Parks in West Virginia. So we added a little bit there. But it's what happens kind of in the middle that really matters in terms of the trip itself. And we've never done 3 weeks on the trip. There certainly have been years that we could have gone 3 weeks, 4 weeks. I mean, there are diminishing returns. While Ohio is just dipping its toe into the pool of spring football, there are other states that have been doing it for a long time, who've made the right decision to do it for a long time. But it's only a 2-week period in these states. So if you're on the road for 3 weeks or more, what happens when you are still on the road and these things aren't going on? And that creates a little bit of an issue. And as we were in Texas, schools were getting ready for their graduation ceremonies. We were at a school. We were at McKinney High School's final day of school of the school year. They were getting one last kind of workout in non-football. I mean, it was, conditioning, some weight room stuff, things like that. So the trip cannot go an unlimited amount of time, thank God, because it was a lot. It was too much. It was too much. I had a couple of friends that I talked to kind of throughout the trip, just via text messages and things like that, and kept me really grounded and kind of kept me connected to reality. But it was too much. It was too much, but we do it for you all. We do it for our fans. We do it for our viewers. We do it for our listeners. So what you can do for us, if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you don't miss a single episode of any of our programming here at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. Not only the Big Meat Kickoff, but Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning, the Buckeye Weekly Podcast, the Skull Session Recruiting Podcast, tons of interviews and analysis and things, anything that we do here. If you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, write us a 5-star review. Doesn't have to be super in-depth. Just, hey, love the show. That helps us with our distribution channels. And of course, as I said, you've been on the fence about signing up for Buckeye Huddle. Now is the time to do it. Take advantage of our special one-time yearly deal, our spring sub sale, if you will. $69.99, 1 year, Buckeye Huddle. Doesn't matter if you're even a current member. You can get an additional year tacked on. So let's say you have 6 months left on your contract, on your deal with Buckeye Huddle, and you take advantage of this deal. You have 18 months. You have 18 months left. You will get the reduced price. There's no reason not to do it. But if you've been on the fence, you haven't done it yet, check us out. Now's the time to do it. Official visits are starting this weekend, and it starts with a very talented group. And I'll get to a couple of comments here in a second. A lot of the Texas players will be in town, including Henry Fanuku out of North Crowley High School, big-time offensive lineman, offensive guard, class of 2025. He will be taking a visit. I just posted that story shortly before coming on the air. So check that out. Who else is going to be on there? I don't think Devin Sanchez is. I think that pretty much a lot of their other Texas targets, including Decorian Moore, talented wide receiver, decommitted from LSU. He's supposed to be there. Dalen McCutcheon is visiting this weekend, a talented wide receiver out of Lucas, Texas. It's going to be crazy. Malik Autry, defensive lineman out of Alabama. I believe he is also on the same weekend as Zion Grady, another talented defensive lineman out of the state of Alabama. It is going to be hit after hit after hit. You can't afford not to be a member of Buckeye Huddle at this point. Yes, we will bring you some stuff here on the YouTube channel, but all of our best analysis, our breaking news, all of that goes over to Buckeye Huddle. So check us out over there. It means a lot to us. 79 Steely Matt. Hey guys, how are you? How are you doing? 79 Steely Matt. He's liked and subscribed. That is fantastic. Again, we are hoping to get 25,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel by the start of the season. We had a great run up to 20,000. The next 5,000 is a big push. Now, of course, what I say to Steely Matt and everybody else is be sure to check us out over at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Also saying hello to Ohio Bookseller. We have just, everybody kind of saying hello. Again, we have not done a show in almost a month. And I did a show, I think the first day of Southern Swing, maybe the second day, and then just realized that it was too much. Because here's kind of how these days run. If you're not on the trip, and of course I released a travel log, and you can read that for free, not a subscriber exclusive piece. I released a travel log, which kind of gave some stories from the trip. So there are not as many unknown stories that I'll be able to come on here, because some people will be like, oh yeah, I read about that in your travel log. But there are a lot of days of where, we would get an interview in the morning. We'd have an interview right after school, and then we might have like an after practice interview. So we could get 3 different schools in a day in theory. And then we had to drive to get to our next location. Now, sometimes it was okay because we'd be in Atlanta for a couple of days, or we would be wherever. But there were times like we left Vero Beach to head to South Florida. So after we covered the Vero Beach spring game, and we're able to talk to TJ Alford, we're able to talk to Champ Smith, we then had to drive down to Fort Lauderdale to be in position to go to American Heritage and to go to Chaminade Madonna. So there wasn't a lot of sitting around time. And when you were sitting in the car all that time, you get, I don't know, you have to force yourself to be awake. You have to force yourself to stay alert, because it's a lot of driving, and you're going on roads that, even though I can sit there and almost call myself a resident of South Florida, I feel like I'm down there so much. You're not necessarily familiar with 95, and I can assure you, anybody who's not driven in South Florida on 95, it is pretty insane. It is pretty insane how some of the people do drive down there. But you get to your hotel at midnight, 12:30. The last thing in the world you're going to want to do is then record a podcast. You get a day of where you don't necessarily have a ton to do. What you want to do is get caught up on the work that you have. Go through your camera, get your interviews out of there, maybe get a little bit more rest, because you know that the next day you're going to have to be up at 6 a.m. We had to get up earlier than that. We had to be at a couple schools by 7. And, I don't necessarily know of a lot of high schools that are flanked by a hotel. So a lot of times, at best we were 10 minutes out, and sometimes we were 25 minutes out from the school. 79 Steely Matt wants to get the show going. Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, I'm going to have to end the show right before 2 Eastern, as I have a Zoom call that I need to get on, but we will get back into the rhythm of doing 3 shows a week, at least one of them live, maybe 2. It just really depends. Hope everybody had a great Memorial Day. If you cooked out anything cool, be sure to let me know in the comments of what it was that you cooked out. We did hot dogs. Not necessarily my first choice, but we had people over, and it was nice to just do something easy. And I did them on the smoker, which is like honestly bringing an atom bomb to kill a fly. But for those of you who want to make delicious hot dogs on the smoker, 225 for an hour. Pull them, put your grill grates on, turn it up to 375, put them on there for 15 minutes, flipping them once after just a light butter baste. You put too much butter on there and you're gonna not feel great. But after a light butter baste, and they turned out really well. So that's what we did for Memorial Day. Now, yes, I have two briskets in various freezers in this house. Would have loved to have done a brisket, but the reality is that you sit there and you have a 22-pound brisket and you cut it down to 16 pounds, and you know, even at that point, probably have 14 pounds of meat. That's a lot. That's a lot to get through. So I need to make sure that if I'm going to do a brisket, that I have people to feed. Somebody that I want to mention who I haven't seen yet in the conversation here is Florida Buckeye. And Florida Buckeye was very kind. He and his son invited Mark and myself over to their house for some home barbecue. And we had a fantastic brisket, just like salt, pepper, garlic, German potato salad. I think there was a coleslaw. I'm not a big slaw guy myself. It was fantastic. Had some beers, told some stories, just, you know, got to hear how both of them got involved in watching Ohio State, how his son, you know, has always been around it. It was a great time. We had a chance to speak with a lot of members of Buckeye Huddle while we were on the road. Another name of somebody that we got to speak to that is a regular here in the chats is Mellow Number 7. He met us out on one of our stops. We had a fantastic conversation. A fantastic conversation. He bought us a couple rounds of beers. It was a really good time, and it is super important for me to be able to get out and meet as many members from the site as possible, because again, we're not talking about a situation of where we have nothing in common. We have everything in common. We have all kind of come up watching Ohio State, whether or not you attended Ohio State, you grew up in Ohio, you just like the colors of the team, whatever, that doesn't really matter to me. It was, it was a lot of fun to be able to do some things like that. And the hope is along the way that we'll be able to do some more things like that. Now, I constantly get asked, Kevin, why don't you guys at Buckeye Huddle host a tailgate? Well, that's a lot. That's a lot to do, because we have to be at the stadium 3 hours before the game, especially a home game. Because we're not. How the hell are you going to do one on the road? That's even more complicated. But we don't have time to. If we were going to do a tailgate, which is putting aside all the questions of how are you going to have a tailgate pass, how are you going to have all this stuff, we would have to kick everybody out of the tailgate like 3 hours before the game, as we had to go to work, or we would have to designate somebody to do all of that stuff. And that's just not right. So we would like to probably try and find a way this summer to have, maybe a meet and greet at a local drinking establishment, whether or not beer is your thing or wine is your thing or soda pop or energy drinks, whatever, and just have a chance to sit around and talk a little Ohio State football, a lot of Ohio State recruiting, and just maybe some of the inside jokes that we have here over on youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. We're starting to get more comments here, so let me get caught up here. Sean saying we did a great job with Southern Swing. I really appreciate that, Sean. Again, it's a labor of love. It's a lot of work. It is a lot of schlepping around. I thought that I packed light for this trip, and maybe I did for clothes, but I didn't with gear, because I brought a backup set of gear, because I had like a nightmare, like 2 nights before Southern Swing, that I was on the road and had a malfunction with a piece of equipment. And then what do? You're on the road and you need to buy a toothbrush. You go out and buy a toothbrush. You're on the road and your camera goes kaput on you. Then what the hell do? Cameras that I use are not for sale at Best Buy or anywhere like that. I have to go to a specialty electronics store, as I use near television grade equipment. So I brought a spare bag, I brought a spare gear bag with me with a second camera and some other stuff. Well, that bag got heavier and heavier and heavier as the trip went on, and I rarely went into that bag outside of getting a GoPro out to film some stuff for little secret, one of 2 Hungry Hungry Huddles that will be coming out as a result of Southern Swing. Probably not much before next week. One of them is a simple just slap an intro on. The other one is gonna take a lot of work. We wanna have some stuff that's gonna get us obviously into June, and then before you know it, we're in July, Big Ten Media Days, a lot of stuff going on. The official welcome of the 4 West Coast teams into the Big Ten. We'll have a lot of content there, but all of that is coming. What else do we have here? Juck on Buck says, awesome job on Southern Swing. Thank you, Juck. I appreciate it. Again, it's a lot. It is a lot. And I am not, I don't know. I don't want to sit there and say like I'm a video game character where I have an energy bar, but if I were, that energy bar is not full yet. We're getting there. We're getting there. But reentry is a lot. Getting back into the swing of things, routine. Oh hell, we're gonna have to sit there first of the month, pay bills again. Welcome back to the real world. But if we did not enjoy what it was that we were doing, we would never be able to make it that far. If I did not enjoy the people that we are bringing this content to, we would have never made it that far. I would have tapped out in North Carolina. I would have tapped out in Georgia. And something else that I want to say is, and I know I say this almost every year, but I was so impressed with the quality of all these young men that we were able to speak to on the trip. And whether or not we're talking about a kid from a big city or a kid from a small town, an offensive lineman, a defensive lineman, a defensive back, a quarterback, whatever, just a high caliber of kid that we were able to talk to. And that's what makes it so much easier as well. I mean, you're going to get to some kids that are going to, the light's going to turn on in the camera and they're going to get all nervous and they're not going to know what to say. And, that's fine. That's fine. I remember starting in television. I'm like, I'm going to be on air. And I did some air tests and I did not like it when the red light was on and I clammed up and I got nervous. Now I don't care. I'm just a babbling idiot. But, this talking about would have been like 95. So, I was 23, 24. I got really nervous. So, I'm not going to judge anything on whether a kid was a great interview or not, but just a super caliber of kids. And I think that's something that you can say for Ohio State is there are not many kids that Ohio State brings in. And it's like, wow, that kid was kind of a mess. Now, you can't necessarily bat 1,000. It's just not how it works. But Ohio State, I think one of the secrets to Ohio State's success, prolonged success, yes, I remember 6 and 7 in 2011. You're going to have that sometimes. But I think Ohio State has had some really strong locker rooms. And I think that culture is so important. And it only takes a couple of blank ups to lose your locker room, to lose your culture. So there are going to be times that people are going to look at the rankings. It's like, there's 33 5-stars according to this service. Ohio State should have offered all 33 of them. Why did Ohio State only offer 17 of them? Everybody's got to be a fit. And that doesn't mean if Ohio State doesn't offer you, if Ohio State doesn't recruit you, that you're therefore a bad person. No. I mean, if Ohio State is full at a position or has other options and just like, we're not going to muddy the waters by throwing 17 offers for one spot, that's fine. But I think Ohio State, I think Mark Pantoni's group do a very good job in the vetting process of knowing what a lot of these kids are all about. And it makes a trip like this a dream in terms of the interviews. Now, again, the trip was not without its challenges. There were challenges along the way. We had a day where we struck out on landing any players due to just the fact that we were at the tail end of the trip and we were waiting on callbacks and we didn't get them. We went to a school and were supposed to talk to a player who had a test at the end of the day, and due to wires being crossed, we just weren't able to talk to them before we had to leave to get to another school an hour away. But all in all, it was a very successful trip. Rick S. We had a trip headed south, but our flight was canceled. They rescheduled us to fly east and then south, but the first flight was delayed. We eventually made it to our destination about 8 hours late. Hold on. And they lost my bag. Well, and that stuff compounds. You get taken off a plane or moved around or whatever. Sayonara to your bag. You may get it in a couple of days. It's just kind of how it works. It's not a great situation. I know that they say you should travel with your medication, in your carry-on, your medication, maybe at least a change of clothes. That's not always possible, but especially in the winter, I make darn sure that I try to do that because you don't know if you're going to get separated from your bag. You don't know if you're just going to get separated from everything, and you want to make sure that you have some skivvies if you're having to sidle up at some airport hotel. You want to make sure you have your medication. You don't want to sit there and fall behind on that because you checked you put it in your shaving kit and your bag is in Saratoga and you need to be in I don't know, Springfield. I was looking for another S city and I was struggling on that one. I kept wanting to say Sinaloa, but I don't know why anybody's going to Sinaloa, Mexico right now. So there you go. So thank you, Rick S, for sharing your travel story with me. Again, one of my friends who I talked to about this said, I have no interest in watching your show talking about that because they felt in my Milwaukee story that I went overboard. I don't seem to remember it as going overboard. I can be a very vivid storyteller. Maybe there was some embellishment there on my part. Maybe not. I don't know. I don't know. I know what I remember. But we're talking a long time ago. I know what I remember. And I still get angry when I think about the story. But it is what it is. And it got me to thinking. So, travel is a pain. And I was reading a story online last night, basically one of those clickbaity stories like, oh, look at our list and we're gonna have a bunch of slides for the slideshow so we can get 20 impressions about why flight back in the 60s and 70s wasn't as glamorous. I was flying in the 70s, but I was a kid, so I don't really have a ton of memories. I do remember some times of being a kid and being told that I had to take a nap during the day because I lived in Southern California, so we would generally take red eye flights because they were a little cheaper and it was just it was easier for my parents to sit there and I'm 7 years older than my brother and 10 years older than my sister. I didn't really travel with my sister that much, if I remember right, but my brother have two kids that could sleep on the flight, not have to entertain them. Cell phones were not a thing, certainly. You weren't sitting there playing on your iPad or anything else, watching movies that way. You had to have those old clunky earphones or whatever that had like plastic tubing on them to try and listen to the 6 on-plane in-house channels, which never went well, in my opinion. But again, it is what it is. So there you go with that. Bootzilla says hello to Bootzilla. Steely Matt saying we got some badass dudes in here right now. Absolutely. Let's just keep going through. Steely Matt saying that I'm making people hungry by talking about food. And yeah, that happens sometimes. And I would say that normally at this point of the day, I haven't probably eaten. I had a handful of pretzels this morning. Um, it was some leftovers from yesterday. So I was like, well, we don't normally have pretzels in the house. So I grabbed a handful or two of them and just kind of snacked on them, knowing that I needed to do a show at 1 o'clock and that I had to get on a Zoom call at 2 o'clock and that my next opportunity to eat would probably be 3:15. And at that point, you better just wait for dinner. That was something that happened a lot on the road too, is that I had a lot of weird 3 o'clock meals. That's just how things worked out. You get a kid at 2, and then you're not going to get another kid till 5, and you eat at 3. Then what do? Probably not going to want dinner. There were a couple nights where I just didn't bother to have dinner. I ate at 3 and I was full. I was like, I don't need it. I mean, yeah, I guess I could eat, But why am I going to force it? Why am I going to force another meal when I don't need it? I managed to lose 2 pounds on the trip. Can you believe that? Can you believe that? Did not. I looked at the gym once at one hotel, like walking to the elevator, I could see the gym. I'm like, there's the gym. And that's about all the exercise I got on this trip. That's about it. A lot of fast food, a lot of sitting on your butt, driving around. I lost 2 pounds. So, friend of mine in the industry is like, you found the new diet. I'm like, I don't know if that's a diet I want to go on. If I have to drive 6,000 miles to lose 2 pounds, I don't think I'm gonna do a lot of that. Chuck on Bucks. How many Buckeye Huddle fam did you meet with, Kevin? Trying to think on that. It's This cat is so mean. She's 17, and if she jumps up in my lap, and if I move, she bites me. So she can sit on the floor. I had a meetup in Charlotte. I met with some people in Atlanta. We met with some people in North Florida. I think did we meet up with some people in Orlando? I don't know. I mean, it was 5, 6, 7, something like that. Again, which is a lot because here's the thing. Not only are you struggling to try and schedule to get into all these schools and be in the right city at the right time, but then you're trying to schedule meet and greets, and that's very difficult. And credit to everybody we worked with on this. Everybody was very flexible because Mark will schedule the schools, I'll schedule the meet and greets, and it's like I can't make any promises that we're going to be at XYZ point at 6. So be patient. But it worked out to a point of where we were pretty punctual. And if I'm 10 minutes early, I feel like I'm late. I am one of those types of people, whether or not you want to say punctual or insane. I think both are applicable, but I have to be early. That's just kind of who I am. On time is certainly late. 10 minutes early still feels late. So there you go. Steely Matt's looking for Mellow. I am too. I don't know where I don't know. I mean, is he down here lower? I don't know. I think that once I get back into the routine of doing more of these shows, as I'm going to sit back and relax a little bit, I think we'll start to see a lot of our regulars come back. I think part of it too is it's essentially June. A lot of people are going on vacations, to the beach, to whatever. Not on as much. Oh, there's just, not a lot of news. What's Kevin going to talk about at this point? We're going to skip this one. We get to July. I think we're going to see the numbers start to come back up. And then once we get into the season, we'll things will be nuts at that point. Let me find out where we are. Okay, here we go. Sean loves the brisket. I do too. If this is about me grabbing a beer and driving around, I only one night had more than 3 beers, and that was a night in Charlotte. And I had an Uber. I had an Uber every step of the way. So none of that was going to happen. I really didn't drink that much on the entire trip, come to think of it. I had the night in Charlotte got nuts. It got nuts. We went to a minor league baseball game, then we went back to this guy's house and drank bourbon and sat out and just BS'd under the stars, talking sports and everything else. So, that night got a little out of hand, and I paid for it the next day and night. Was sweating still like the night after, just because I've cut back on the drinking considerably. Kind of just a conscious decision. A lot of empty calories, just not really worth it. Now I say that, and I had like 3 or 4 beers last night, but outside of that, it was like a beer here or a beer there, 2 beers here, but it was never a case of where it was like, oh, I'm going to have a couple beers, and then we're going to drive to Houston. We even went to a brewery in Houston. And I only had 2 beers there because I had to drive back to the hotel, and Mark's like, I can do it. I'm like, no, it's fine. And I think that was, the right decision. And again, I don't need to run up the Southern Swing budget with a beer tab. That's certainly not the case. So I think that of all the Southern Swings, even with this being the longest Southern Swing, this is probably the fewest beers that I've had on the trip. So there you go. Rick S. said, we also had hot dogs, 400 degrees in the oven for about 13 minutes, 4 cuts on the top to keep them from splitting, flip once, nice and easy. I did score my dogs as well. I scored them on both sides. Thin scoring, but enough. Um, Honestly, when I had them at 225 for an hour and I pulled them, probably could have gone at that point, but really, putting them on the flat side of the grill grates for for that last step at 375, I think really made it. Everybody was very happy with the hot dogs. I'm not a big hot dog person myself, but if I'm going to have a hot dog, I want it to be off a grill. Boiled hot dogs, bleh, I just do not like the idea of that. People are like, "Well, you like brats?" I'm like, "I do." And it's like, "Well, you boil them in beer." I'm like, "You parboil them in beer, and then you still finish them off on the grill." I just don't think that there's anything appealing about the thought of a hot dog and that hot dog water and everything else. Bleh, it just, I mean, I really want to barf just even thinking about it. Not quite as bad as Burger King, but almost as bad. And I'm sure a lot of people here saw my Burger King video. I did eat drive-through truck stop Burger King on this trip in the state of Georgia. Find it on the channel, youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. It's in our shorts video. That's a story that I'll remember for a while. Us taking the car down to 8 miles until empty is another story that I will remember from this trip. A lot of stories. Be sure to check out our travel log. All of the stories that we have filed are in the travel log, along with mileage, things that happened during the days and the nights, things along those lines. So a fun read. It was fun to write. There were days that I've got 2 days behind on the travel log. Oh, I don't have time to do this right now. Then we get somewhere and I had to sit down and write everything from memory. But a good chance to keep up with all of that. Steely Matt saying Mello had a blast with you guys. Yes, I mean, and now Mello is a texting friend. I mean, Mello, I believe, signed up for Buckeye Huddle for the website, which is fantastic. Really great meeting Mello, because the thing is, like, sometimes some of the people we meet on the road, we meet year in and year out. We have a friend in Atlanta that we see every year. Like every time we're in Atlanta, more or less, we're going to hang out with him. But with Mello, that was new. That was new. We been talking to Mello here, but we had not met in person. And I think meeting in person was important. And he would reach out. Oh, we had a meet and greet in Jacksonville. If I didn't say that, we had one in Jacksonville, and then we had one. I guess the other one was in Orlando. Um, it was just really great. So now I got a texting friend, and he'll shoot me some questions here and there, and we'll do our best to answer them and move forward with all that. Phone is blowing up for some reason. I have no idea why. Mello said you guys were awesome. That's fantastic. I was really glad that we were able to do that. Let me see what else is going on. Sean saying, isn't Menace on now? I honestly should have the 12 o'clock hour. This is the big me kickoff. I'm big noon. I should have the 12 o'clock hour. I purposely go on at 1 because I know a lot of people want to watch that at noon. Now I just can't. I'm not going to move any further. I'm not going to move any further. And people are like, well, you probably shouldn't even worry about if that's a different channel and everything else. I try to be a man of the people, and if people want to watch that and then come over and watch me and have come up and said to me via text messages or whatever, hey, I wanted to watch you, but I was on the other show. We need to work on that. So I go on at 1. I go on at 1. Here we go with Buckeye Sean. The interview Mark did with Jamie French was huge because all the national people are saying he's completely locked in on Texas. We all in this industry work together. I generally like almost everybody in the industry. Now, you're not always going to be 100%, and I'm not. There are probably a couple people I don't particularly like. That's fine. It is what it is. It's not like we're all being told to sit in a room together and hug it out or anything like that. So I like a lot of people, but it doesn't mean I always agree with them. Nothing has changed with Jamie French in the last couple of weeks, in my opinion. He is not taking any official visits to have a different view on things. I think people are leaping to some conclusions on that. I certainly think Texas feels good about landing him, but I also know that schools constantly feel good about landing this kid or landing that kid, or even if they don't feel good, they might say it. Sometimes you can speak, into existence, but I am not ready to buy into that. And I saw some whatever's predictors. I'm not going to name the specific flavors of the predictors out there. Say that today, as of today, nothing has changed, in my opinion. Sure, since we talked to Jamie French at his high school, Mandarin High School in Jacksonville, I'm sure he's had countless conversations with coaches. I no doubt, but nothing has dramatically changed, in my opinion, to warrant a huge flip in how things are going there. So, I don't know. I think that there is a better chance that he and Decory and Moore go to different schools to maybe get away from each other in terms of wanting to be more of a focal point. But if you're looking at Ohio State, any 2025 receiver is still going to have to compete against Jeremiah Smith for reps. Whereas, again, you might be a 5'11" type of receiver, 6-foot receiver. You're not going to be Jeremiah Smith. I mean, whether or not you're an outside guy, inside guy, I mean, all of that is, it depends on the player, it depends on the scheme and how everybody wants to handle things. But, I'm not pushing in all of my chips saying Jamie French is going to Ohio State. I think that there was a point about a month ago where everybody believed that that was lock, stock, and barrel. Well, it's recruiting. Recruiting changes. Things change. And we're in a very different world with NIL and everything else. And people need to remember when I say that, that doesn't mean that I'm saying that there are kids out there, only concerned with what their NIL deals are. No, there probably are a few. I don't know if Ohio State is necessarily involved with a lot of those guys, but there's certainly going to be a few. And that's a case of there's a difference between a kid who comes from good means, who is looking at the NIL, versus a kid that's coming from absolute terrible means, who wants to take care of his family, who's looking at NIL. But the point is that under certain circumstances before NIL, where am I going to go and get developed and get ready for the next level and everything else? Now with NIL, there's the very real thing of what am I going to get in the short term? And because of that, you're going to find kids who are going to maybe opt to go to quote unquote a smaller situation. And I'm not talking about Texas in this point. Texas in no way, shape, or form is a smaller situation than things. I mean, it's very much on par. But you're going to have some kids that are going to probably be like, I'm going to go to like a UCF or an SMU or something like that and be the guy and get paid. And, if it isn't necessarily working out in a year or two, I can sit there and go somewhere else rather than sit somewhere for a year or two, only to find out that I'm not going to be able to play there and maybe lose my marketability. So again, there's a lot to it. We don't know what we don't know when it comes to modern recruiting because things are changing so much. Oh, you think you've got a handle on things because of what the collectives are and everything. Psych. Now we have this new House versus the NC2A settlement that's going to come out, and schools are going to be able to pay players. What is that going to look like? I don't know. All of that conversation really happened while I was on the road. I have gone back and read stuff, but I still don't have my arms around it. I still don't know exactly what that's going to mean. But I was talking with somebody in the recruiting space about the strategy of a lot of kids and the thing of looking at being able to get on the field, and the importance of that is very much in the minds of a lot of these players. And if you couple that with a good NIL deal, you just don't know. So, we've talked about how Ryan Day talked about needing $13 million to assemble a roster and everything else. We don't know what the ask is going to be on this kid versus that kid. And at some point, you're just not necessarily going to be able to take everybody. It used to be a matter of, well, you couldn't because of the 25-man class or the 85-man scholarship limit. But now there could just be a dollars and cents component to it as well. Oh, well, we only have X amount of dollars. Do we put all of it in one player or do we pass on that player because we can't make it work? And do we spread it out on three other players that maybe less of a Cadillac position? Sorry, my voice was getting a little scratchy there, but I did remember to bring a Coke with me. Let me keep going through here. We got here, yeah, French isn't locked in at Texas. That's not my belief either. Let me just keep scrolling up here. I'm just going to keep looking. Rick S. really liked Jamie French's personality. Yeah, getting a lot of really interesting, fun kids. I got to hear almost every interview. I think there was one point where Mark and I had to split up, and I think he shot a couple on his phone, and I shot a couple on the camera. And that was just really a matter of sometimes you get somewhere and it's like, well, we got 15 minutes before the kids have to get to their next class, and you just have to kind of spread up. Uh, Sean likes brats. I'm a brat guy. I like brats more than hot dogs myself, but that's my opinion, and that is not a shared opinion in this household. So I try to. I I'm the cook generally, and I'm a very fussy eater, so I make a lot of decisions of what's coming out of that kitchen. So I'm not generally going to put my heels in when people want hot dogs. I'm not going to be like, I'd rather have brats. Screw you. I'm making brats. Now I might make both. I might make both, but that was more effort than I wanted to do. Really, I wanted to do these on my gasser and my igniter. I knew coming out of last grilling season that my igniter was kind of acting up, but I thought it was just the battery. So I changed the battery. I can hear it firing, but it's not connecting. I'm not mechanically minded enough to do a lot of these types of things. Yeah, I can disassemble stuff. I'm not great at reassembling stuff. I don't really have a photographic memory, and I certainly don't have a lot of mechanical skills. So I'm gonna wait until I can get a buddy over who's more mechanically minded to kind of check my work, or better yet, have him do it, and I'll just give him beer. But the point is that I wasn't able to do these on my gasser. I had to do it on the pellet grill, which is fine, but it's a lot of pellets to spend on an 8 pack of Nathan's hot dogs. Um, we got ZZM, Kevin. I used to watch you guys a lot during the weekly playoff votes. Yes, we will do that show again on Tuesdays once we get to that point. I think it's generally like the first week of November is when we get the first CFP rankings. We'll have to kind of see how they're going to handle it now with the 12-team playoff and everything else. But those are always fun shows. Those ones are challenging because Tom, Tony, and myself, all three of us have different outlets of how we get our television fed in. I have direct TV, which means I have the slowest because of satellite lag. I think Tony has cable, and I don't remember exactly what Tom has, but they're always about 5, 7 seconds ahead of me. So we'll figure out how to do those shows up big moving forward for sure. Let me keep going through. I think we are kind of caught up on a few things. ZZM saying back in 22, I was worried there was a culture problem, but not anymore. You know, I think that we we see things that look like a disconnect at some points, and maybe the first place we go is it a culture thing? And sometimes I think it is, but I don't know if always. I think that I really feel that locker room culture for Ohio State has been good. Now, with that being said, there are going to be the people who are not Ohio State fans who say that Ohio State has grown soft or whatever, who say, yeah, you got a culture of softness, which I don't necessarily agree with. But I've said, and I apologize that I'm repeating myself on things that I've said in the past. I think that tough love and all that is all well and good, but I think that when Urban had fight and some of those other things, that maybe we were seeing things from a little bit of a different angle. Um, I know a lot of people hated seeing Kyle McCord out there dancing, all the pregame dancing and the the little circle and all of that stuff. I mean, that's for every person to come to their own conclusion on. As we're wrapping up, and again, I have a Zoom call in 6 minutes, so I have to jump off of here and be able to get on that Zoom call in 6 minutes. Urban during his tenure, and I'm not spilling any secrets here when I say this because this is all well documented. Everybody was on pins and needles under Urban. He could walk around the corner at any point and just destroy you. I think that when Urban left the program and Ryan ascended, that everybody was able to not have to like look around the corner at all times to avoid an ambush. I think there needs to be I think that the barometer needs to be somewhere in the middle. I think that you do need to have some edge to your team. You need to be on edge a little bit. I don't think you need to be at the point of where you're just exhausted all the time because your blood pressure, your heartbeat is in your mouth because you're just constantly living in fear of everything. But with that being said, I also don't think that you need to have as much of a country club atmosphere. And I'm not saying that that's where they are right now. I'm not saying that they're at a country club atmosphere. I'm just saying that you need to have somewhere. If 10 is insane asylum and 1 is Muirfield, I think you need to be like a 5. I think you need to be maybe a 4. I don't think you need to be at an 8. I don't think you need to be at an 8 to be successful, but I don't think that being at a 1 or a 2 is great either. Sean's thanking me because he can see that we're running out of time here. Rick S is saying, take pictures before you take something apart when you disassemble. Gives you something to refer to make reassembly easier. I do know that for sure. But again, I am so non-mechanically inclined. Now, if you need to put a computer together, I can do that. And people are like, well, I mean, if you can sit there and do this and kind of change wiring and stuff, I don't know why you can't do that. Well, just a mental hang up. Why do I like salsa and I hate tomatoes? I don't know. It's because I was dropped as a kid. I don't know. Just something that is. So I can look at the pictures and everything else, and it all should make sense. And again, I pulled the igniter out, and one of the wires came out. I'm like, well, I'm not stupid enough not to be able to figure out to put that wire back in. It's not the wires into the igniter unit. I have to look at where the igniter unit goes into the grill, and it's going to need a little bit of a tear down to be able to access it. And honestly, if I could just find somebody who's like, hey, Bob's Grill Service, we're going to come out and clean up your grill and put it back together, I would probably just do that. But I also, I probably need some super chats before I do that, but I'm not going to be asking for them today as we are in our final minute here. ZZM, it's okay, Kevin. My mom accidentally hit me in the head with a hammer when I was a kid. She told you it was an accident, or was it an accident? I mean, again, I think I got hit with a paint star a couple of times. Certainly, I got hit with a wooden spoon once or twice. Wasn't a bad kid. I just was a curious kid and ended up getting in trouble a few times. We can talk about that the next time again, as I have to get on a Zoom call here. But I want to thank everybody for joining me here on the Big Meat Kickoff. We'll probably go live again on Thursday and then maybe do a tape show on Friday or flip those. But hit that bell so you do not miss a single episode of any programming here on youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. But until then, your homework again, leave in the comments any of your best airport travel nightmares. I am curious about your best travel nightmares. I need to read these stories to see if I'm the monster or if my friends who are calling me a monster just are messing with me. I have not been pulled off a plane. I've not been dragged through the airport or anything like that. But if you're effing up, I'm going to tell you you're effing up. So leave me those comments. I'll be interested to see that. But until next time, talk to you soon and have a great day.